You need that hat in order to be able to notify them.
It would look cool.
Yeah.
And then, of course, get a little bit more organized because you're not sure how long you're going to be sitting here for, waiting for help. Okay, organize your area now. Organize your campsite. He seems to organize it quite well. So once you got all this done, of course, maybe you switched your phones off because you want to conserve your batteries, right? So open it back up. Give another call if you managed to speak to somebody and tell them what has happened. These are the people who are there. So many people are safe. I got this person who's got a broken ankle or a broken knee. We managed to stop him from screaming. What is ETA for our trip back home? What can I expect? Yes.
Sometimes when you're in a remote area, you may not be able to make a call, but you can text.
Excellent. Actually, it's a really valid thing. So the gentleman here says, if you're not able to call, you may still be able to text sometimes. Whatever form of communication that you could use would be great. So I think it's good for us to think outside the box on how can I communicate.
Yeah. For example, the ELT that I have, and I'm sure what other people have as well, has a mic with it, so it'll transmit on 1.1.5.
That's fantastic. If you can actually communicate with somebody and organize, that would be great. So I think that would be a good time for you to again call back and see, organize yourself with communicating with somebody and figuring out what's happening.
And the other thing that I've been told is that if the plane is in an area that it's hard to see, try to go to a clearing and you can actually use leaves or something like that to put in SOS. It can be seen from the air. And the other thing that I always carry with me is a CD, which seems ridiculous. I'm not going to play tapes, but it has shining qualities of a mirror, and it also has a hole in the middle so you can sight it on an aircraft and hit the pilot's eyes perhaps with it, so that it makes yourself more visible.
That's actually fantastic. Did you all hear what he said? For those of you who didn't, I just want to retransmit that because I think it's really useful what he said. Because he carries a CD as well. And he said it's not to listen to music, but to use its reflective nature like a mirror. Right? It's to see through the hole and then reflect light. So the pilot can actually observe you and spot you. And I think that's a really good tip.
Is it legal?
Huh? So let's say luck hasn't been very favorable and you've not had a pickup in the first 5 hours, then I think it's going to be a little bit of a prolonged stay. What are the other things that you can do? CD would come in handy now. If you have
It's just 2 engine outs, you kind of start thinking about that.
This guy didn't turn out quite well for him, this lift. I don't know if you see this movie, Castaway. But I think it's really important. It is very important for you to stay busy. That is really important if you're going to be stuck in a place for a long time, because actually keeping busy actually helps us survive. And also I think it keeps your morale up high as well, because you've got things to do, and that is really important. Keeping busy is important. So how can you keep yourself busy? It might be just you in your plane, or you might have a team of people. I think then, like you mentioned, SOS. See if you can find a clearing and get a big giant SOS, so people can, if they're in a search and rescue looking for you, maybe they can spot something in the sky. Make it easier for them as well. Assign yourself or your team members, delegate work. You go and find us some food. Find where fresh water is. Right? That type of thing. What are the resources that we can actually use in this area that we could help ourselves with to survive for an extended period of time?
One more thing I might mention is that I just read this about 2-3 weeks ago with the fresh water, is that you can, I'm sure online you could find this thing, but you can actually, if you've got some type of container like a plastic bottle, you can make a filter for the water. Fresh water in the stream is one thing, but you don't know what the cow's been doing in it upstream. So
and the Camden tablets, I'm sure you heard about them.
Yeah.
As well, they can sterilize water. Just you drop these tablets in them and it dissolves and kills most of it. So it's makes your water more potable. The next thing you want to be doing is actually calling for help and all this is great, but you also need to be looking out as well and seeing who's coming your way. Is there any other human being around? Can I get help? Standing watch is a really important thing. Have you seen in movies where there's a scenario where they ask for help and the plane's trying to search and rescue and they can't see you actually because you're hidden away somewhere behind trees and so on and so forth. I think it's important for you to also figure out when there are other human beings that can help you, you call out for help as well. So stand watch. And then carry water. Carrying water is a good thing. You're giving yourself plenty more reserves. We don't know how long we're going to be there. Water is a very important thing for us to have. Dehydration is not you don't want to go down dehydrating, so carry water. And then if you've got the time, home improvement. Now is the time to start doing other things for yourself. Make yourself a little bit more comfortable, right? Because it's an unknown on how long you're going to be here. So now is a good idea for you to start doing things for yourself. I'm sure you've heard, you're familiar with maybe Robinson Crusoe, right? Good story on.
That's it.
If you're a very skilled person, or even if you're not, now is a good time to start learning. Try and hunt, see, because your supplies are going to run out. There's a limitation on how much food you're carrying with you. So you have to actually then now start figuring out, how am I going to survive? Are you going to use up all those 30 days that we mentioned that you can't eat, that you can survive without eating? Or are you going to proactively do something to put dinner on your table? Right, if you have one, the table. But I think now is a good time. One of those survival kits I was showing you earlier on had a fishing line. Hunting that's not such a bad idea if you're actually going to longer trips. Might actually help you, fish. Catapults are actually, I don't know if you used a slingshot. Anybody here used a slingshot? Has anybody hunted with a slingshot? I have. They're very, very effective. They're very effective. Yeah, and they're just as good as using a bow and arrow. You can actually shoot down a bird with a slingshot very, very effectively. And they're very light, easy to carry, easy to train on as well. So slingshots are not a bad option. Spear fishing or even a bow and arrow if you can build one. Then again, this actually really depends on what level of skill you have and what level of skill you're able to train yourself into the short time that you've been exposed to in this environment. Who's seen this movie? It's a fantastic movie. It's a fantastic movie. Actually, in this movie, it's called The Flight of the Phoenix. It's about this. It's a C-119. They call it the flying box. It doesn't want to fly with it, but somehow it's a miracle that it flies. It's in the Gobi Desert in Mongolia. There's a good reason why people say outer Mongolia. It really is outer Mongolia. So the crew is coming back and they're shutting this place down, and they get into trouble and they crash land 200 miles off track anyway, and so they are really in the wilderness. And after several scenarios where they fight with each other, that, this, and the other, they finally figure out that I think the best way for them to get back out is to rebuild from what was left. And that's why the Phoenix, rising back from its ashes. So they actually rebuild a smaller plane from what is left of the bigger plane and create a single engine, and you can see they construct the wing, and then they finally actually take off and come back. It's a great movie. Yeah, but the thing is, I think what this movie relates to in many of the things that we actually mentioned today, in terms of taking stock of what you have and getting busy and doing something for yourself, I think that's a really, really good example of this movie. If you have the time, if you've not watched it, take a look. I think it will kind of, in many ways, go back. You will actually be able to see through all that we've been speaking of on the seminar.
Jimmy Stewart.
Huh?
Jimmy Stewart.
Dennis Quaid.
Oh.
Two movies.
That's the second.
You're talking about the first one.
Yeah, the original one.
There's always the argument that the original one was always better than this one. I like this one though. So the most important thing in survival, what's the most important asset? The asset is
Staying alive.
Huh?
I'm kidding. Staying alive.
You're right. It is the most important thing, and that is what it is really. At the top on the survival list it's a prime success determinator in surviving. The waste nothing is always available. What do you think is that?
Your attitude.
Huh?
Your attitude.
Exactly.
Is that it?
It is a will
Okay.
to survive.
Yeah.
That is the single most important thing for you to survive. It's your will to survive. If you lose the will to survive, it's over. Nobody can help you after that. So one has to have a very strong determination on wanting to survive and the will to survive. And that is really key for survival. Have you seen this one?
Yep.
127 hours? Incredible. This guy's hand gets stuck in this rock in the middle of nowhere and he's got no help. This is a real life story. If he did not have enough will, he actually cuts off his own hand and then survives. If he did not, he would not have been able to get out of the situation. It's a really good example, and this is not even a story, it's a real life scenario. It's a great example of that will. I'm not saying cut your arm off. You know, that first
Land the plane first.
Huh?
Land the plane first.
Yeah. But it's a good testament to the will to survive. And that is the most important thing. You have to have the will to survive. There is plenty of information available. If you wanted additional information, I can give that to you. But I will conclude the presentation with this, and I'm going to open it for discussion because I think the discussion is most important. If you have additional contributions to this, I'd like to hear. All of us would like to hear. It's yours now, your time.
My question is, if you're like crashing in the middle of nowhere, don't they want to stay close to the aircraft? That's where your ELT's going off, or what do you do?
I would think so, really.
I mean, since there's a town nearby, you kind of want to make your way to it. But
Yes, of course. But if you are in the wilderness, like we mentioned, and worst case scenario, I would really like to. I mean, people are going to be looking for crashed aircraft in the first place.
Right, follow the signal.
Yes, and if the best thing I would do would set up my camp close to my crash site, not wander away.
As a
too far.
practical matter, I don't know, I guess people do go really in out far, of course. I'm thinking of it myself and most of us. There's, for VFR flying, it's not used enough, and that is flight follow. So that we are constantly, forever talking to ATC. So when we lose an engine, we can talk to them and they know exactly where we're going to go down. And therefore, there's virtually almost instantaneous recovery. That's got to be, I don't know, that's got to cover 98% of the people that have problems.
Agreed. And I think it's so true. If you are having flight following, it actually changes the whole scenario.
I don't understand. I've done many seminars all over the decades, and I always mention this, and for some reason, flight instructors always say, oh yeah, that's a good idea, and they go on. And as though, and I know pilots who are really a lot of time, they don't have any they don't use it. No, it seems like very few people use this service. It's there for everyone.
Just to jump on that, I've been flying out VFR, beautiful day, and I'll just let the controller know, hey, I'm headed back to the page. And they'll give me flight following. I didn't request it.
That's what they do today.
They just, I'm like, I was planning on listening to music, but I guess I'll talk to controllers on the way back.
Yeah, no, so and people think that, well, they won't talk to me, or they're too busy and all that.
They wanted to do it.
There are very, maybe at 4 o'clock on Sunday afternoon, and if you're right here along the lake, or right here, near O'Hare, you might, well, you can hear. Matter of fact, we were flying that way the other day, and the controller was continuously talking to ATC planes. So the point is, we never could get through. We understand that. But I'm telling you, 99.9% of the time, if I'm VFR, I always connect, and they give you a squawk, and it's perfect. It's beautiful. It gives you confidence.
I couldn't agree with you more. Also, if you look at a lot of the accident statistics, very often you find that people who went down on VFR are the ones who are talking to anybody. And I think it's really, really important.
But also, flight following,
yeah.
we have to realize
Radar
that
service.
radar services, where these events where they crash, is not always radar
Not
services.
always.
And that's the thing.
But, yeah, like if you crash around here, it's good to have it, but you're never that far away from civilization. But this is more like,
In this scenario, that would be a different,
I agree with that.
wilderness.
But then if you're gonna fly there, you should have that, a personal locator beacon and the other things that require, make you survive. You've got to have that stuff. As you were saying,
The other
pre-flight
thing
is,
is, though, we have an MEA, and if you kind of adhere to that, you've got contact.
yeah, MEAs,
Some
yeah.
type of areas that might take you uncomfortably high, but.
That's
the fact
exactly
is
right. If you're,
that-
even if you're VFR, get yourself an IFR chart, and it'll show you the minimum en route altitude, is what he just said. That will give you communication with ATC. I don't care where you are in the United States of America. So it's available.
And I think in the United States, I think you're right. Very few places where you can't actually get ATC, because really, if you look at airspace, class golf is really where they can't see you. That's why it's class golf. And majority of the United States, you got class echo everywhere. So they can hear you and they can see you.
The key there, however, is the United States. I've flown to Alaska, and you cross that line and go up the Alpan, and basically, you don't talk to anybody. You can catch other aircraft, plane to plane, but that's about it. So at that point, you've got to have the spider tracks, and you've got to have all this other nonsense.
Well, you know, Vince, that's a good point to bring up. It seems to me that the 122.75 is our air communication between pilots. Would that be, is that recommended
It's a
to
different
keep?
frequency in Canada.
Okay, well, even though there is a frequency, because there's enough traffic there to talk to each other for this very, it could be our own ATC assistant by talking to other pilots along the way to keep contact that way. Anyway, I think it's a legitimate idea, that's right.
No, I'm with you on this. Like I said, this is your floor now to discuss. And I think it's important, if you can at all communicate, that would be, it would enormously change, the unlikely event that if you go down, I think that would be enormously helpful. But also, I think we are actually speaking also about preparedness in scenarios where you don't have that luxury of speaking to somebody. And in those cases, I think it is really important for us to also think about what are we going to do if the plane goes down. And some of the things that we discussed will help us.
And that equipment that you presented in the beginning there, did any of them show a handheld transceiver? I don't
Actually,
recall.
none of those, because those equipment I just got off because they are recommended from different organizations, not from flying organizations.
But having one is obviously
Yes,
the ultimate
yes.
solution.
Yes, and it's a bit like your personal locator beacon. So that wasn't on the list, of course. So you really want to be, and a satellite phone is a great thing, because if you're actually ever going to fly into areas which is like like those kind of areas, I would definitely rent a satellite phone. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, just to give some thought to, this is great, and if we're, in Mongolia, and you're way out there. But really, if you stop and think about it, we're in October. What's the biggest enemy for the next 6 months? What do you really need to have here in Chicago? And what's the likelihood, something of having an engine failure going down? Could be Wisconsin, could be Iowa, could be Southern Illinois. So, what do you really want to have?
I would definitely wrap myself up really well. This is most
Easy
important.
close. I mean, these are really this is your biggest enemy around here
Yes.
in the adjoining states.
Sure.
Cold, dark early, and not a lot of communication when you're up in the middle of Wisconsin.
I think the communication part is like I said, if you're having flight following and so on and so forth. Actually, when you're flying within the United States, really actually we're quite blessed because we've got excellent communication capability over here. It's really the other things that can get us. Like for example, in winter months, it gets really cold over here. Sometimes we got minus temperatures going over minus 15. So you go down there, you walk out of the plane nicely, and you've done an excellent landing. Right? There's not even a scratch on the plane. How long are you going to survive outside after you walk out of the plane?
Right, and that's what I'm talking about is yes, we are pretty well covered. But you ski for the day, you're leaving Madison, you're coming back, you got 5 square miles. That's all it takes. So it's 4:30, it's dark, and you safely land on the ground. Are you going to survive it? If you can get out of that plane, it's 10 degrees, can you survive?